The late autumn sun stretched golden fingers across the Crestwood Elementary playground, casting long, lazy shadows over the cracked asphalt and rusting swings. Deputy Rachel Monroe stood rigid near the chain-link fence, her left hand resting on the coarse fur of her canine partner, Shadow. The air smelled of drying leaves and faint exhaust, but something else, something invisible, made the hair on her neck prickle. The playground was too quiet. Children usually screeched and tumbled across the jungle gyms like flocks of birds. Now, only the distant squeak of a single swing chain stirred the silence. Rachel shifted her weight and scanned the scene. Her instincts, sharpened by years of patrol work and the unspoken language she shared with Shadow, screamed at her to stay alert. Shadow stiffened beside her, a low growl vibrating in his throat. Rachel followed his line of sight. A man was approaching from the far sidewalk, dressed in a charcoal suit too formal for a school pickup. His steps were smooth but deliberate, his eyes locked onto a small figure near the monkey bars, Luna Thompson, a petite 7-year-old with a backpack almost larger than her tiny frame. Rachel's hand tightened instinctively around Shadow's leash. The man knelt, speaking to Luna, but the girl shook her head. Before Rachel could react, Shadow lunged forward, barking a warning that shattered the heavy silence. The man flinched, grabbed Luna roughly by the arm, and began dragging her toward the street. Rachel's training kicked in. Dispatch, possible abduction in progress, Crestwood Elementary, requesting immediate backup. She barked into her shoulder mic. She sprinted after them, adrenaline flooding her veins. The man shoved Luna into the back seat of a silver sedan parked half up on the curb. Rachel pulled her firearm, but couldn't get a clear shot without risking the child's life. "Stay with him, Shadow," she commanded. The sedan's tires screeched against asphalt as it fishtailed and sped down the road. Rachel and Shadow tore after it, but distance widened between them with every second. Just before the car disappeared around the corner, something fluttered from the back window and landed near Rachel's boots, a delicate origami crane, its white wings stained with a smudge of dirt. Rachel bent down, heart hammering, and picked it up with trembling fingers. The paper was still warm from Luna's small hands. Memories she had locked away long ago crashed over her. The night her own little brother Jason vanished while walking home from the park. The same helplessness, the same guilt. This time would be different. This time, she would bring the child home. Shadow whined softly beside her, his gaze fixed in the direction the sedan had gone, ready for the hunt. Rachel straightened, slipping the fragile crane into her pocket. "I promise," she whispered, not sure if she was speaking to Luna, Jason, or herself. "I'm coming for you." Rachel gripped the steering wheel of her cruiser, so tightly her knuckles went white. Shadow sat alert in the passenger seat, his ears pricked forward, nose twitching, as the radio crackled updates from nearby units. Every passing second widened the distance between Luna and safety, and the clock was already against them. They had a partial plate number, a vague description, and a city thick with places to hide. Rachel's mind raced. Focus. Think like him. Where would he go? Shadow whined, scratching at the dashboard. His body tensed as they neared the last place the sedan had been spotted, an intersection choked with early evening traffic. The trail was cooling fast. Then Rachel saw it, a flash of silver 2 streets ahead, darting down an alley. She yanked the wheel hard, tires squealing as they swerved off the main road. Shadow barked once, a sharp, encouraging sound. The alley was a dead end, blocked by a graffiti-covered dumpster and a chain-link fence. No sign of the sedan. No Luna. Only a scattered trail of cigarette butts and crushed soda cans. Rachel slammed her fist against the steering wheel, frustration bubbling up. Shadow leapt down and sniffed feverishly at the ground. That's when Rachel spotted it, another origami crane, wedged beneath a dumpster wheel, its delicate wings flattened. Her throat tightened painfully. Shadow barked again, this time circling back to her side. His tail stood rigid, his body vibrating with contained energy. He had picked up a scent. "Good boy," Rachel breathed, unclipping his leash. "Find her." Shadow surged forward, leading her out of the alley and down a side street that fed into the industrial district. Warehouses loomed like sleeping giants, their broken windows staring blankly into the dusk. Rachel's boots pounded the cracked concrete as she kept pace, her mind flashing with memories of Jason, how his missing posters eventually peeled off telephone poles, how her parents' hope had eroded like sand slipping through fingers. Not again. Ahead, Shadow stopped abruptly, nose pressed to the ground outside a rusted gate. Rachel followed his gaze to a row of storage units, their numbers barely visible under peeling paint. Most looked abandoned, perfect for someone who didn't want to be found. She drew her weapon and moved carefully forward, heart hammering in her ears. From inside one of the units, she thought she heard something, a muffled sob, quickly stifled. Rachel pressed herself against the cold metal door, Shadow crouching low beside her. Suddenly, the sound of running feet echoed behind her. Rachel spun around just as a figure in a charcoal suit sprinted into the fading light. Michael Riek. Without thinking, Rachel shouted, "Sheriff's Department." "Stop!" Riek glanced back once, a cruel smirk twisting his lips, then disappeared between the buildings. Rachel cursed under her breath. She couldn't leave the storage unit, not if Luna was inside. She chose the girl. "Stay guard," she told Shadow, motioning toward the path Riek had taken. Rachel holstered her weapon and wrenched the unit door upward, metal screeching against rusted tracks. Inside, bathed in the last golden light of the day, was an empty chair, a roll of duct tape, and a photograph. A photograph of another missing child. Rachel swallowed hard. This wasn't just about Luna. It was bigger, much bigger. Rachel snapped a photo of the scene, the chair, the duct tape, the photograph, before slipping the evidence into an evidence bag with shaking hands. Her heart pounded, but her focus sharpened. She radioed in the location, voice steady despite the storm inside her. Possible connection to multiple missing children. "Send backup to Ridgeway Storage Facility," she said, clipping the mic back to her vest. Shadow returned moments later, panting, tail drooping. No sign of Riek. He was gone. Rachel cursed silently. She couldn't afford any more delays. Luna's life, and maybe the lives of other children, depended on speed. Shadow led her further down the storage row, nose low, weaving between forgotten units. Rachel followed, each step drawing her deeper into a maze of rust and rot. The sun had almost vanished now, leaving the world smeared in purples and deepening grays. Streetlights flickered uneasily to life. Somewhere, a train horn wailed, a lonely, distant sound. Then Rachel's radio crackled with a new call. "All units near Crestwood Elementary. Smoke reported on campus. Possible arson." Rachel froze. Smoke? At the school? Realization slammed into her, a diversion. Whoever had orchestrated Luna's kidnapping wasn't just one desperate man. There was a network behind this, and now they were trying to erase evidence or tie up loose ends. Rachel sprinted back to her cruiser, Shadow leaping into the passenger seat before she even opened the door fully. Tires squealed as she whipped the car around, sirens screaming to life. She tore through the streets, mind racing faster than the speedometer. If they were targeting the school again, other kids could be at risk. As she pulled into Crestwood's lot, thick gray smoke curled from one of the back buildings, the old maintenance shed. Teachers and staff were herding frightened children toward the front lawn, coughing and shouting. Rachel leapt from her cruiser, scanning the chaos. Through the smoke, she spotted a familiar figure staggering. Ms. Gardner, Luna's teacher, her face streaked with soot, clutching a clipboard like a lifeline. Rachel ran to her. "Anyone missing?" Ms. Gardner coughed violently, then shook her head. "We did a head count. Everyone's here but—" she faltered, her eyes wide. "But Luna's family is inside her grandmother. She was picking her up today." Rachel's gut twisted. Without hesitation, she motioned to Shadow and plunged into the smoke-filled building. Heat pressed against her skin. The air tasted metallic and thick. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Shadow barked once, sharp and urgent, pulling toward the right. Rachel followed blindly, trusting him. Through the haze, she found an older woman collapsed near the maintenance office, Grace Thompson, Luna's grandmother. Rachel hoisted her up, half carrying, half dragging her toward the door. Shadow stayed glued to Rachel's side, coughing and whining. Outside, Medics rushed forward to take Grace, who was gasping but alive. Rachel staggered back, her lungs burning. She looked around, heart hammering. The chaos was no accident. Someone had orchestrated all of it, to distract, to destroy, to cover their tracks. And somewhere out there, Luna was still waiting for her. Rachel tightened her jaw. They could light the world on fire if they wanted. She would walk through it to bring Luna home. Rachel didn't wait for the medics to clear the scene. Her eyes darted around the parking lot, scanning for anything out of place. The smoke from the shed was dissipating, but the weight of it hung in the air. Her mind raced as she pushed through the crowd of teachers and frantic parents. Luna. Where the hell was she? Shadow nudged her hand, his dark eyes full of understanding. She gave him a quick scratch behind the ears before turning back to the scene. There was something wrong. Something bigger. It wasn't just about a child being snatched. It was part of a larger, more intricate plan. Rachel's phone buzzed in her pocket, jolting her from her thoughts. She pulled it out quickly, glancing at the number. Lieutenant Marshal Grant. She hesitated but answered. Grant, she said, her voice tight. You're in over your head, Monroe. Grant's voice came through, flat and cold. I've just been briefed. We've got multiple federal agencies coming in to handle the situation now. I need you to stand down. Rachel's blood ran cold. Something was off. The urgency in his tone, the way he brushed aside the investigation, it didn't sit right. She could almost feel the walls closing in. You're wrong, Lieutenant, Rachel said, her voice low but resolute. I'm not backing down. This is personal. Before he could respond, she ended the call. Her hand shook slightly, not from fear, but from the realization that this whole situation was tied to something much deeper than she'd thought. Grant's words echoed in her mind. Stand down. Why would he say that? The truth was becoming clearer with every step Rachel took. The connections, the photographs, the smoke bombs at the school, they weren't random. Someone powerful had a stake in keeping Luna quiet, keeping this entire investigation buried. Shadow sniffed at the ground, tugging at the leash again. Rachel followed him as he led her toward the edge of school grounds, where a small cluster of police cars had gathered. But it wasn't just the usual patrol officers standing there. Rachel's gaze landed on someone who made her stomach drop, a familiar face, but one she never expected to see. Detective Simone Reyes. Rachel's pulse quickened. Simone was one of the most respected detectives in the department, but there had always been something off about her, something that never fully aligned. Simone caught sight of Rachel and offered a tight smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. Monroe, she said, her voice smooth but guarded. I see you're still playing hero. Rachel raised an eyebrow. What are you doing here, detective? Simone's smile faltered. I'm working with the feds. We're tracking a trafficking ring that spans the entire region. Then why is Grant trying to shut this down? Rachel pressed, stepping closer. Her mind was working overtime now. She was so close to the truth. She could feel it. Simone hesitated for a split second, and Rachel knew something was wrong. It wasn't just the case that had brought Simone here. Rachel was starting to put the pieces together. Too many people were trying to silence this investigation. Before Rachel could ask anything further, a police officer jogged over, his face pale. Deputy Monroe, we've got a hit on Riek's vehicle. It's parked at a warehouse near the docks. Rachel's heart skipped a beat. This was it. She turned back to Simone, her jaw tight. I need backup. Now. Simone's eyes flickered with something that almost looked like hesitation, but she quickly masked it. You're on your own, Monroe. Don't get in over your head. Rachel shot her a hard look, then turned and ran toward her car. The hunt was on. Rachel slammed the door of her cruiser shut with a force that rattled the frame. Shadow was already in the passenger seat, alert. His ears perked up as if he knew the gravity of what was about to happen. The siren screamed as she sped toward the docks, the night air rushing through the cracked windows, carrying the scent of salt and rust. Her heart raced, but there was no room for fear now. She was past that. All she could think about was Luna, the little girl who had been pulled into a nightmare, and the people responsible for it. As she neared the docks, the faint glow of streetlights barely pierced the fog that clung to the waterfront. The warehouses loomed ahead, dark and silent, as if holding their breath. Rachel's grip on the wheel tightened. This was the place. The same place she'd seen in Riek's photos, the warehouse marked with the same faded numbers. She pulled into a secluded parking lot, the headlights casting long shadows across the asphalt. There were no other vehicles in sight, no sounds, just the steady lapping of the waves against the pier. Shadow growled softly, sensing the danger. Rachel exhaled slowly and pulled her gun from the holster. She checked the chamber one last time before exiting the vehicle. Shadow, ever loyal, was at her side, his body taut with anticipation. "Stay close," she whispered. They moved toward the warehouse, keeping low, their footsteps swallowed by the fog. The large, corrugated metal door stood half open, a small gap allowing just enough light to leak through. Rachel signaled for Shadow to stay quiet as she approached. As they stepped inside, the temperature dropped. The air was thick with the smell of old chemicals and dust, a stark contrast to the crisp sea air outside. Shadow led the way, his nose twitching as he sniffed the air. Rachel's senses were on high alert. Every creak of the building structure felt like a warning. And then a voice, low, almost muffled, drifted through the shadows. "You shouldn't have come, Monroe." Rachel froze. It was Riek. He stepped out from the shadows, his cold eyes locking onto hers. Behind him, the faint outline of a child's figure, Luna, bound and silent, sitting in the corner of the room. "Let her go," Rachel demanded, her voice steady, though the anger burned beneath the surface. "This is over." Riek chuckled, stepping closer, his hands raised in mock surrender. "It's never over. You don't get to stop it. There's too much at stake." Rachel's pulse quickened as she stepped forward. "You're part of something much bigger than yourself. The trafficking ring. You're just a cog in the machine." Riek's smile was bitter, cruel. "You don't understand. The people I work for, they'll find you. They'll find her." He pointed toward Luna. "And you'll never be able to stop it." But Rachel wasn't listening anymore. Every word Riek said only fueled the fire inside her. She took another step forward, her finger tight on the trigger, ready to end this nightmare. Just as she was about to move in for the final takedown, a loud voice rang out from behind them. "Freeze, Monroe." Rachel's head whipped around, her eyes narrowing in shock. Lieutenant Marshal Grant emerged from the shadows, his gun drawn, aimed directly at her. "What the hell, Grant?" Rachel's voice trembled with disbelief. "You're working with him?" Grant's face was unreadable, cold. "You should have listened, Monroe. You have no idea what you're dealing with." A heartbeat of silence passed between them. Rachel's mind raced. Grant was compromised. But how deep did this go? Who was he really working for? And then it clicked. The diversion at the school. The smoke bombs. Grant's order to stand down. Everything was part of the plan. Before she could act, Shadow lunged forward, knocking Riek off balance. The gunshot that followed was deafening, but it missed. In the chaos, Rachel dove behind a stack of crates, pulling her own weapon free. Grant was still aiming at her, but he hadn't counted on one thing: loyalty. Shadow, growling, raced across the floor, pinning Grant to the ground. The lieutenant's gun clattered to the floor, out of reach. Rachel moved swiftly, her gun trained on him. "Game over," she said quietly. Grant struggled, but Shadow held him in a firm grip, keeping him pinned. The look of fear and anger in his eyes was unmistakable. "You can't stop them," Grant spat, his voice hoarse. "They'll come for you." Rachel didn't flinch. "I'm not afraid of them." She turned back to Riek, who had stumbled to his feet, now surrounded by her team, who had arrived in force, led by Detective Simone Reyes, whose expression was unreadable. "You're done," Rachel said to Riek, her voice cold with finality. As Rachel knelt beside Luna, Shadow nuzzling the girl's hand in an almost gentle gesture, the setting sun bathed them all in a fragile, golden light. The shadows of the night were retreating, but Rachel knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. Luna's face, pale but safe, looked up at Rachel with wide eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her small hand reaching out to touch Shadow's fur. Rachel smiled softly, the weight of the day lifting just a little. She knew the fight wasn't over. The trafficking ring was still out there, but now she had a little girl to protect. and she'd be damned if she'd let anyone hurt her.